Pirates, ninjas, Vikings, today we are going to build a Hollywood flat. This is a 4-foot by 8-foot wall that you would normally see on a stage during a show. From the plan, the designer would give you something that looks like this, which would go to the shop and you'd get a plan that looks like this. This is what we're going to build. But sometimes the shop's overwhelmed and you get something, like that. But let's going to go back to what we're going to do. This is a wall that is 4 foot by 8 foot. So let's start with the cut list. First off, we need the top and bottom board. Those are 4 foot long. So 2 of those, top and bottom, 4 foot. Then the side pieces, those are 8 feet, but we've got to subtract how thick the top and bottom boards are. They're each 3/4 of an inch, so 1.5 inches, so 8 foot minus 1.5 inches. The sides are 7 foot 10 and a half. Now, I also have 3 toggle boards going across. Those are 4 feet, but we have to subtract the thickness of the sides, which again are 3/4 of an inch each. So 1.5 inches. So the toggles are 3 foot 10 and a half inches. There's also a 2x4 running down the middle of this wall, which is 8 feet tall. But again, subtract the top and bottom, so it's 7 foot 10 and a half inches. So off to cut the lumber. So the first thing to note is that our 4-foot board is going to come out of an 8-foot board, leaving us with a board that is not quite 4 feet long. Because if you try to get 2 4-foot boards out of an 8-foot board, you still have to remove 1/8 of an inch of the saw blade cutting through the wood. So 1 4-foot's coming out of an 8-footer, and the remainder piece is going to be used to make our toggles. So do that for 2 boards. Use the remainders to make 2 toggles, and then find another board and cut your 3rd toggle. Now, when choosing what side of the board goes where, I like to put the bad part of the board on the inside of the wall. So whether it's that wane where the bark was, or here's a knot that's no longer there, I'm going to put that all on the inside of my wall. We use narrow crown staples to assemble this. It's a 1/4 inch wide crown, and they're 1.5 inches long. All the joints get glued. It helps the staples hold things together. And I'm going to line up that the end of the board is in the same plane or flush with the side of the other board. So glue, staple, watch your fingers. These 2 boards are the same plane or flush, and these 2 edges are flush. Do the other 2 corners, and the perimeter of this flat is done. Now there's a 2x4 that runs down the center of this flat. It is intersected by our 3 toggle boards. So we're going to have to notch out where the toggles go. This is what a notch looks like on another flat. The key measurements here is that it's 2 foot on center and our board is 3.5 inches wide. Now, I'm going to throw some math at you here. First thing we need is 2 foot, so any multiple of 2 foot. There it is. And our board is 3.5 inches wide. Half of that is 1 3/4. So I'm going to go to 2 foot. I'm going to measure over 1 3/4 inches, make a mark there, and I'm going to put an X where the board goes. The next multiple of 2 is 4. So 4 and add 1 3/4, put an X where the board goes. Next 2 foot, add 6 foot, measure over 1 3/4 inches, put an X where the board goes. And we're ready to draw out where this 1x4 goes. Put the board where the X is, trace around, and that's the notch that's coming out. I'm using a jigsaw to cut out the notch. Take out the 2 shoulders. Take a weird angle cut to get down to the side. Put your arm in front of the camera and cut to the other corner. Notch successful. This 2x4 is centered in the wall, which is 4 feet wide. So go to the halfway, 2 foot, and the 2x4 is 1.5 inches wide, so half of that is 3/4 of an inch. Go 2 foot plus 3/4 and 2 foot minus 3/4. Put an X where the board goes. Go ahead and glue this up. And then realize you never cut this 2x4. So go ahead and glue this up now that it's the right length. Put the board on the lines. X is where the board goes. Make it flush. Staple away. Do the other side. Now the toggles, we're going to use the same measurements that we used with the 2x4. Go to the 2 foot, add 1 3/4 inches, make a mark, put an X where the board goes. So 4 foot, add 1 3/4 inches, make a mark, put an X where the board goes. Down to 6 foot, add 1 3/4 inches, put an X where the board goes. Do this on the other side as well. Now to assemble, I'm going to glue up both sides of my toggle. Come back. Here we are. Both sides. And then the notch I cut out, we're going to put some glue in there as well. Now, yep, it's inside the flat. Now, so put the board on the line. X is where the board goes. 3 staples. And while the glue's still wet, let's go to the other side. Line the board up with the line. Make sure it's all flush. Now the center of the toggle meets the 2x4. And I'll come back here. I got to get a pencil. So 2x4 at the 2 foot mark is 1.5 inches thick. So go over 3/4 of an inch. Subtract 3/4 of an inch from the 2 foot mark. That's where the board is supposed to go. Now, we're never going to let the wood win here. Never let the wood win. Just push it where it's supposed to go. Hold it tight. Grab the stapler to make sure it's not going to go anywhere. 3 staples. That one's sticking up a bit. So hammer time with the tripod. And that's your first toggle done. 2 more to go. It's the same process. Glue up both ends. Put some glue in the notch. This is going to go quick enough. I can do one side and then just go or do the other side. Need my tape measure. And again, I'm going to mark with a pencil where this is going. It's just like math. I need to show my work. The board might fit just perfectly there, but with that mark, I know it's there. And that's it. The frame is done. That's one sturdy frame. It needs to be because we're putting the facing on next, and that's anything but flat. To attach the facing to the frame, we are using 3/4 inch narrow crown staples. And we're also going to glue the facing to the frame. Now, the process I use to square up the facing with the frame is create a perfect corner. The facing is loosely on top of the frame. It's not exact, but I'm going to make this corner perfect. And with a staple, that perfect corner is not going to move. From there, I work down the shorter side of the flat. I can push the facing and the frame back and forth till I get the facing and framed flush. Add some staples and move on down. Now here at the end of the flat, the facing is overhanging and there's not enough of the frame for me to grab onto and push. So I'm going to grab a pipe clamp and I can use that to pull the facing and the frame together. It's flush, staple away. Now, you go back to the perfect corner and take a look down the side of this flat. That's not perfect, but we're going to make it perfect. Don't let the wood win. It's just a matter of pushing the frame and the facing back and forth. Some of it's real easy to do. There's not a lot of effort required to flush it up, but now I've got a little problem here. So grab the pipe clamp again. Tighten down, it pushes the facing and the frame so they line up. Staple away. I'm putting staples about 9 inches apart from each other. Once the two sides are done, and your lumber's fairly flat to start with, you can just staple the other two sides down. To staple the toggles down, you can see where they are on the outside of the flat by where the staples are. I mean, that's where the toggle's at. But remember, we put those on a 2-foot on center. So if we just grab the tape measure and measure up 2 feet, we know the board's there at the 24-inch mark. Take the multiple of 2 feet, go to 4 foot. That's where the toggle's at. Go once more to the 6 foot, and that's where the toggles are. The 2x4 running up the middle is similar. It's on center, so hit the 2 foot mark, staple away. So there we have it. Construction is complete, but there's still one more step before we send it off to the paint department. This is flat A1A from the designer. So we need to label it I also put an arrow pointing to the top of the flat. And I'm going to cover it in tape because it's going to get back painted or painted on the back side. Now we paint the back for fire safety reasons. An unpainted wood surface is more likely to catch on fire than a painted wood surface. So we paint the back. And I'd rather do it now when there's nothing on the front. This is a great use for all those leftover paints you have that you don't know what you're going to do with. But because this is my honorary Jimmy Buffett flat, we're going to paint it a nice sky blue. And that way the fire marshal's happy. And you know what they say, happy fire marshal, happy life. So let it dry. And you can peel the tape off. And there you go. Your Hollywood style flat is done. Now this is the way we build most of our flats here. There's many ways of building a Hollywood style flat. I'm sure I'm going to build a few that are different than this. And I'll show you how I do those. But this is our standard stock flat. And this flat will live on for many shows. Well, I hope you learned something about building a Hollywood flat. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments below.